What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. There's now more conversations going on about games running at 30 FPS. And I wanted to see if we can shed some light on why this is the case, looking at it from the commercial area, looking at it from the development area, and also from the technical area. And I think I can help, in my opinion, navigate why this is the case. But more importantly, if you play on consoles, I have a tech for you. It's a hack that you can use to tell if a game is going to run at 30 FPS or 60 FPS on your console. And bear with me as I kind of wade my way through some of this. I think it's really going to open up what may be going on. So the very first thing I have here is, Gotham Knights on the screen and playing at 1440, high-end gaming, it's running 60 FPS and so on and so forth. I've heard a lot of console players, put up hypotheses saying, why can't some of these games give us the option to be able to run a performance mode? It's a very simple answer. The question is, these games that don't have the performance modes simply don't have the performance modes. And the way that you'll know they don't have the performance modes is if you actually go look at their PC specs before they are released. If they don't announce it ahead of time, you can basically go find out. And even if they do, and you're wondering why you don't have a performance mode, you can simply just go look at the PC specs to be able to know, because now your PlayStation 5 and your Series X, they're basically now in the PC realm. They're now talking Zen. They're now talking, all of the new technologies that AMD is providing. Well, a slightly different version, but, still, they're all in the, RDNA family now, right? You're now in it with us. So now you got to know what your machine is capable of so that you're not disappointed by these games and you really do get an understanding as to what these things are doing. So the very first problem that we have is a lot of these gaming companies, they want to one-up each other and make GTA, but they have, coins as budget compared to Rockstar. Rockstar's got time and money. This is why they can sit there for 10 years making their games. In fact, I would not be surprised if there's a 60 FPS version of GTA 6 on console, because they sit there for 10 years and they can build the game. Now, if there isn't, it will also not be surprising, because maybe this is probably the most ambitious GTA game that they're bringing out, and it would just basically scale past that scope of giving that performance on the console. What I mean by this is games like Dragon's Dogma 2, Gotham Knights, Hellblade, Senua's Saga. These games all want to have this visual fidelity that they don't want to sacrifice, because the other guy made the game look good, and Red Dead Redemption 2 looks good, and these games look good, and God of War looks good, and so we all want to make our games look good. However, as they try to continue to one-up each other in this department or make their games bigger, they still have the limited 5-6 year time span for most of these games. I don't know exactly how long it took to make Dragon's Dogma 2, but I'm just giving a general example. This limitation now puts them in a place where they got to get this game out, and it's 30 FPS, and that's what it's going to be. And so when you look at the PC specs, let's take Gotham Knights for example, it will give you a very clear picture as to why it is not possible to run the version of the game that they have right now at 60 FPS on console. So when we take a look at Gotham Knights, what do we see for its PC specs? Its minimum requirements are a Core i5 9600K or AMD's Ryzen 5 3600. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is the minimum requirements for you to be able to play 1080 60 FPS, there's just no way the PS5 or the Series X can do it. Why? The Series X, the CPU in it is a 4800S. This CPU has been matched toe-to-toe with the 3600. Digital Foundry did the tests, and it came last. Even some older CPUs were still able to beat this particular CPU. So already that particular setup in terms of the core of what's going to load textures, run AI, run, all kinds of different things in the game in terms of systems and processes is already lacking on both consoles. As to the GPU, I've seen a lot of people get hung up on the GPU, but most of these games, they need something to process a lot of the data. I mean, you got to look at it. A video game is a piece of software. It's a piece of art, but it's scientifically generated. It follows the rules of science. So the CPU has to be capable of generating and loading these things in an efficient way to be able to give you good frame times and so on and so forth. Yes, the GPU plays a role in accelerating and generating the graphics associated, but these games don't necessarily seem to have enough in terms of tasking graphic, processes, that you need too big of a, a GPU. Now, yes, I get it. You're going to be playing at low quality with a 1660 Ti, but if you want to play at a high quality 1080 60 FPS, they're asking a 2070 or a 5700 XT. So ideally, you could play high with the 4800S, which is the CPU in the Xbox Series X, high quality, but are you going to be able to play at a higher frame time? No, you're CPU limited. So the conversation goes on. We look at another game that is also what I think CPU limited. Possibly they were trying to one up the other person by making the game look good, blah, blah, blah. Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 uses basically almost the exact same requirement in terms of CPU. And when you look at even what they're asking for that particular same CPU that Gotham Knights is going to give you 60 FPS, Dragon's Dogma is going to give you 30 FPS for it. Look at what I just showed you. Gotham Knights says use the Ryzen 5 3600, right? Or in this case, they said the i5 10600 or the Ryzen 5 3600X, and we'll give you low settings 1080 60. Dragon's Dogma is like, we'll give you 1080 30 FPS, and if you have this GPU, you get some ray tracing. Or if you have a better CPU, we'll give you 2160 at 30 FPS. So now we want to one up everybody, want to make a bigger game, want to make a game that is more intricate, but your hardware is only going to be capable of doing this. If you want more, go buy new hardware. So even if, say, in some places the console, when they gave the unlocked frame rates, right? Many people didn't necessarily notice this. When Dragon's Dogma gave the unlocked frame rates, what they were saying was, go get your own hardware, and the game will run at whatever your hardware can push the limits to. So the consoles, they were capable of running it up to 40 something, FPS at whatever it is, and maybe at 4K at that point, they could just leverage some of the GPU, which is actually really nice on the PS5 and the Series X. But the CPU is basically going to have to run those frame times, load processes, and if it's not powerful enough, you have to upgrade that CPU. If you have a PS5 or a Series X and you want an upgrade, maybe you go buy a PC where you can now get a better CPU, because even with a PS5 Pro, they've slightly, clocked the CPU higher and improved the GPU. But if another game shows up on the scene like these games, that game is probably going to go up and even eat the CPU and still not, be able to run at these high fidelity and high frame rates that many people may be talking about. So when the competition from these companies continue to spur on like this to get the best game, the better looking game, the more realistic looking games, it goes to show that, the industry is basically changing, and the budget that these, manufacturers, PlayStation and Xbox, basically predicted that these other studios would need was way short. I think if they knew that everybody was going to get super duper ambitious when it came down to trying to put the games on these new consoles, they would have probably built something that was a little bit more stronger, and they would have charged a little bit more. At the time, people were crazy. They would have paid $650, $700 for a marked down or a subsidized, more powerful console. But I think they were just so excited, hey, we're getting something better than the PS4 and something better than the Xbox One, so everybody should love this, and then it could do 4K 60 FPS, depending on the game. Yes, but not every game. And even though people might say, maybe if you turn down the resolution or whatever it is, no, they would have had to design the game from scratch to actually be able to do it, or maybe targeted way weaker hardware so that when the game finally fires up on these new consoles, easy 60. The Division 2, they basically just went ahead and just said, sure, 60 FPS. I mean, it's playing remotely. The Division 1, Xbox just upgraded it with their little frame rate boosting. Or let's go back to like the Arkham games. The Arkham games were requiring you to basically have an HD 7870 as the minimum requirements, 2 gigs of memory, a GTX 660, an i5 750, or you could use an i7 3770 or an AMD FX 8350. Man, the Series X and the PS5 blows this trash out of the water. If they put Arkham Knight on, if they unlock the frame rates today without making any modifications, man, I'm talking at least 70 FPS for the PS5 and for the Series X, high settings, 70 at least high, because I played that game at 60 FPS using even much older hardware. I used the RX 480 to be able to play Arkham Knight at 60 FPS. I used the i5 6500. This CPU and GPU, they are nothing compared to the PS5 and the Series X. But it's interesting that they haven't unlocked the frame rates. This is probably a Warner Brothers thing, or maybe they want to make a remaster someday and maybe monetize it and give you a frame rate upgrade or some silly thing like that. So this is, in my opinion, a very important conversation for us to basically have, so that you know what games you're going to be playing, you know how they're going to perform, and you're not necessarily shocked as to what's going on. So when these games continue to come out and the more they get bigger, I don't know if Microsoft and PlayStation are going to be able to make a console that can keep up. Even though they'll say it's a generational leap, sure, perhaps what they want to do is they want to leverage some of the more powerful technology that has hit the market from 2020 to 2024. Possibly take one of them that's already now cheap to make because the newest stuff is now, basically advanced, and something in the middle ground that they see as an average, and they can use that to build the new, consoles that are coming down the pipeline. And then some new technologies in terms of software, machine learning, like DLSS and all of that stuff. If you notice, the PS5 has PlayStation has its own super sampler already built in because they want to leverage the machine a little bit longer. So technology basically in the hardware space kind of bet low. And the software space, they kind of all want to one-up each other. Elden Ring is capable of doing 60 FPS because they basically kind of tuned the art to kind of like not necessarily have all that detail. They weren't necessarily concerned. However, they were able to mask a lot of the shortcomings, for the visual fidelity with really good art. If you look very carefully at, say, the trees and the vegetation in a game like Elden Ring compared to Dragon's Dogma, you'll notice. If you look at the animations as well, Dragon's Dogma has heavy animations, very beautiful, well done animations. Its visual effects are also pretty, insane. But you can always kind of like, have some technical artists do some really crazy stuff for you as well. They'll make your game look good and run well if you have the time and the budget. And I think that luxury was probably not there, or they just didn't want to be bothered with it because they just didn't have, the unlimited funding. I say unlimited funding, but the heavy bag that, say, all these other studios that are capable of doing it did have. So we're in an intersection. Companies making ambitious games versus their wallets and the time that they want to basically go to market and the hardware that we have access to. So once you know this, you're able to pretty much pinpoint exactly where you stand and what is more important to you as a gamer. If you want to game, if FPS is your priority, you should not be touching consoles. You shouldn't be. Simply because it's not necessarily that the consoles are bad, it's that they don't allow for you to be able to make the necessary changes easily to be able to prioritize what it is that you want in your gaming. If FPS is not a problem and just playing the game is all you want, and you want simplicity and you want all of that, definitely a console's fine. And there are many people that play on consoles. 30, 60 FPS does not bother them at all. But if 30 FPS makes you sick, or, some people say it makes them sick, they can't really do it because it's all this and that, you shouldn't be touching a console if you actually play a wide variety of games. Except the games that you prioritize on console always give you 60 FPS. They've been optimized to do that, and so on and so forth. Thanks so much for watching the video. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.